Hi, everybody, and welcome to our second town hall on education. For those of you who didn't tune in last time, my name is Kavita Bassi, and I'm a fourth year student at Western, and I'm so excited to be having these conversations here tonight. I'm going to hand it over to my co host, Ananya Jaykumar, a student going into grade 12 at Central Peel Secondary School, to talk a little bit about our guests and the things we're going to be discussing tonight.
Tonight, we'll be discussing going back to school plans during the pandemic, as well as racial issues within the Peel District School Board. To talk about COVID-19 plans, we have two guests with us here tonight. We have Peel District School Board Trustee Kathy McDonald. Welcome, Trustee McDonald.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here again.
It's a pleasure to have you. And next, we have Karen Dancy, Parent Council Chair at Holy Spirit Elementary School. Welcome, Karen.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So, our first topic of discussion tonight is going to be back to school in the midst of a pandemic. In just 3 short weeks, students all over Peel are slated to go back to school, and the youth have some opinions on that. Let's watch a short video highlighting what the youth think about back to school plans.
If you're expecting a second coronavirus wave, why are they getting sent out in the winter? I don't think they should be at all going to school because we might get 200 to 250 cases a day.
There's a lack of direction when it comes to regional programs such as AP and IB, to name a few. Students that have chosen the remote learning option will essentially be forced to opt out, which is not fair considering the amount of time, money, and effort they have already invested.
Way better for high school students to actually go out and learn rather than just sitting online, getting bored out of their mind, and just listening to something going into their ear and going out the other ear.
I'm not quite sure at the Peel level what supports we have in place for students who will be isolated from their friends. I know the COVID-19 pandemic has brought a lot of new stressors that we're all adjusting to. And so from that perspective, I'm a bit concerned that maybe we're not ready yet. Maybe we haven't explored all the options to best, help children out during these tough times.
Families coming from low socioeconomic backgrounds are often falling through the cracks. We do see marginalized communities, families from low socioeconomic backgrounds, who are often being left behind when it comes to these decisions coming from the provincial government.
There are a few concerns that need to be addressed. One of them being the standardized testing between students who are learning in person versus students who are learning online. I think that both methods foster different skill sets, and as a result, students might end up with discrepancies based on how they chose to learn.
So, starting off, I'm not returning to high school, but I have a little sister who is. And, Trustee McDonald, do you think that Peel schools are ready to bring kids back?
Well, we will be doing our best to be ready for when they actually do come back. Currently, this world it's a crazy time. It's unprecedented, and there is no template. But we're not flying by the seat of our pants. We're working hard. We are trying to come up with a plan to accommodate as most of our students, right? We have so many students with such a plethora of needs. And, staff has been working overtime, double overtime. They, even with our basic things like just basic hygiene, getting the place clean and ready, getting our HVAC systems updated, right? Will we be 100% ready? Only time will tell come opening school day. But we are striving towards being ready to make sure that kids can learn in a safe environment. But there are so many unknowns that we're working with that it's challenging.
So, Trustee McDonald, I know you mentioned, a little bit about the different things that are going on in schools with the HVAC systems. There was actually a tweet recently where a mom, her son came back from school and he had switched masks with somebody. So how do you think, in schools that don't have air conditioning, do you think that young kids are going to be able to wear those masks all day in the heat? What are your thoughts?
I personally don't think that young kids, definitely, kindergarten kids, grade 1 kids will be able to wear masks. They're adults that have issues wearing the mask, right? We actually just got a letter today from Dr. Lowe from the public health, Peel Public Health. So based on that letter, our procedures will be updated and information will be given out to staff and families. I don't have what the new procedure will be yet. However, I think in all practicality, to expect a 4-year-old to sit with a mask all day, it's going to be very tough. I'm not sure how you're going to deal with masks, let's say when they come off faces, especially if teachers won't be touching the kids and so I don't know what that would look like too, because a 4-year-old might have difficulty putting back on a mask or won't be able to put on a mask by themselves. And actually you have 3-year-olds, because 3 of my 4 kids entered school. Because you're born in October, you have situations where you can have 3-year-olds. You enter school at age 5 in grade 1, right? So I think it's going to be a challenge, to say the least. And, to me personally, this is not a public health opinion, but I personally think it's going to come down to a lot of hand washing and hygiene, because I don't see how a 4-year-old or 3-year-old is going to keep a mask on all day.
I think that's definitely an important factor to consider. And I'm going into grade 12 and I've made the decision to go back to school, but there are so many factors that play into that. So, Karen, will you be sending your kids back to school in September, and what factors play in as a parent?
Yeah, well, I'm torn. I have a boy going into grade 7 and a son going into grade 9. So I want them to start school, and I'm sending them to school, but I'm also fully prepared to pull them out if I don't feel comfortable. Now, mine are obviously older, so they can put the mask on themselves, and that won't be an issue. But at the elementary school, I mean, it's still going to be crowded. I don't know what his classroom will look like, right? So I'm worried, but I am prepared to pull them out, and if they have to stay home at a time for periods of time, I will. I mean, they'll have to catch up. They'll be totally independent, because I'm not even sure how the online, because it's so much, right? We don't know. I mean, I know there's different opt-in days and so forth, but we have no idea. And I mean, I know the boards are doing the best they can given the circumstances. So I just have to trust that my kids, they'll tell me if they don't feel comfortable.
And could I just add to that? So preliminary reports, I don't have, again, a document in front of me with exact numbers, but there are estimates that there are as high as 25% of students in Peel are not going back to school. So what our classrooms would look like, because again, it's that unknown, because we may have situations that when we open, a class may find themselves with only half the students in there. Is that going to happen? Again, only time will tell. In terms of periods when people can go, what they call opt in or out, again, kids might, let's say, go to school and they say they're not comfortable. The parents might say, I'm not sending them back. So they would not come in. But at the opt-in period, are people going to be actually opting in? We don't know, right? To come back. So there's a kind of unknown, because we're dealing with people and emotions. And so there's so many unknowns, and our policy is so fluid. It sort of changes with the environment, with what's happening,
with the wind,
health.
Yeah. No, exactly. Like, I mean, you said about the classes, if my son's class, if only 10 kids in his grade 7 class show up, does that mean there's only 10 kids? No, because then it'll be a split class, because our school is a small school, right? So already there's going to be a split. So are they going to split it 3 ways, have 6, 7, and 8s together? Like, we don't know, right? I mean, the surveys have gone out and we're waiting. I'm obviously with the Catholic board, so we're waiting for our results, but it's so, I'm torn. Like, one day I say yes, they're going to go, and the other time it's like, well, I don't know. I want to try. I think it's important for mental health that they try to go to school.
So, Trustee Mcdonald, will you be sending your kids back to school?
Well, I will be. Well, one of my kids is a university graduate, so he won't be there.
Okay.
And I'm sending one out of the 3 are going back. So one is for one of my children for health reasons. I won't. And my one kid I just figure is too young to wear a mask. I don't see how little kids
Yeah.
like that would be wearing a mask. My kids are actually spread out, right, from 7 to 21. So yeah,
Yeah.
but you know,
Yeah.
so that's where I am at.
Yeah, and I think I can't speak from the perspective of a parent, but as from the perspective of someone going in, there's so many there's information coming at you from all ends, and so the government keeps making announcements. And Karen, as a parent, like, what do you want to hear from Education Minister Lecce and from the Ontario government? Like, what do you need them to tell you?
Smaller classes. Make smaller classes. We're fortunate. Most schools are they're bigger than a downtown Toronto school in terms of older buildings, but they're still crammed. The desks are big, and you can't. There's no social distancing, and the little kids. They cram them in, and they have no concept of social distancing on the best of days. So to cram them in a small class and then tell them, oh yeah, you can't touch your friend, and make sure it's smaller classes definitely. Um, yeah, that's staggered. I know they just announced that they're going to stagger the dates, but like the start dates. But what's that going to look like? It's just going to be still. It's not going to help the situation. Smaller class size for sure would help.
So, continuing on that, Trustee McDonald, what from the board side, what do you think, you're doing personally to kind of see that those measures are implemented in school, or what measures are maybe you spearheading to be implemented in schools?
So what we're doing now as trustees, we are speaking with our supervisor, and he is right, because remember, Peel is in a unique situation where we know we don't have the authority, right, to vote on policies. So we speak to our concerns, we bring it up to our supervisor, and he is the one that will be approving and sort of spearheading the policies that our director will implement. A lot of the actual day-to-day procedures that are happening in the board, they're really operational issues. So, the supervisor will relay our concerns to the director,
Yeah.
right, in terms of how she will proceed and operationalize things.
Yeah.
And again,
So
you kind of look to see, what other boards are doing. We talk with parents, kind of get a sense of what. And again, I keep, I can't emphasize this enough, that there is an unknown element. So on September we may have classes that are half filled, right? So we don't know, right? And as time goes on, and things may get better, it's still 3 weeks. I think in Brampton yesterday we only had 8 cases, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it's over, but we don't know what 3 weeks from now is going to look like, really. So it's really hard to plan for the unknown, and things can just spin on a dime. You could have an outbreak, and book your best laid plans is useless, right? So it's kind of planning in, you sort of having different scenarios that we have to be planning for, right? And most will not happen. Only one scenario is going to happen, right? So,
and parents don't like when we like to know a plan, right? We want to make sure that we know what's happening to our children. And but as Trustee McDonald said, it can change tomorrow. It could be, a decision can be made, and we can go back into lockdown, right?
Okay, so we're going to come to the end of this discussion now. I just want to say thank you so much to Karen for joining us. Thank you for engaging in wonderful conversation. And I'm going to hand it over to Ananya to introduce our next topic.
So the next thing we'll be talking about is racial issues in the Peel District School Board. And one of the key components of this, or one of the most highly discussed things, is the report that was released against the Peel District School Board, as well as the hiring of a new supervisor and a new director of education that will be dealing with these issues. And so in order to do that, it's really important for us to hear from youth. So let's watch a video now to see what youth have to say about anti-Black racism and diversity in the Peel District School Board.
Black students are more likely to be suspended over minute matters such as clothing attire. Students who are suspended, especially in secondary school, are less likely to achieve their academic potential and graduate on time.
The focus needs to be on the minority. those that felt uncomfortable, unsafe, and unsupported because their voices deserve to be heard.
Time that we don't make these same mistakes over and over again because they're absolutely absurd. And throughout my experience, I'm not going to lie to you, I've also faced racism, I faced misogyny, and I guess the biggest thing that we want as students of color or even females is just equity at the forefront of everything, and that our voice should be heard.
There needs to be more better guidelines, and there needs to be more. They need to train the teachers so they can take appropriate steps in solving this problem.
Obviously, diversity means we have people from different communities who come with different needs, and a lot of these people are targeted in discrimination through racism, and so diversity shouldn't just be something to show.
At the Peel District School Board, there's a lot of work to be done, not just at the board level, but also at the school level as well. On a micro scale, I feel that in classrooms, students are not being treated fairly, especially those from, again, Indigenous groups, the Black community, and other marginalized communities as well. I do feel that students are inadequately being supported in the classroom, whether it's with academics or whether it's anything else for that matter.
So as we get into our second discussion topic, we want to introduce our second panelist, Tasia Cox-Armstrong, who's a Peel graduate and the organizer of Peel March for Justice protest. So welcome, Tasia.
Hello, how are you guys?
I'm doing great.
Good.
We're live. How are you?
Yeah.
So to get right into the conversation, a lot of these students have raised really, really important concerns about the Peel District School Board. So to start with you, Trustee Mcdonald, what is the board doing right now to combat anti-Black racism?
Well, just before I answer that question, I just want to say with regards to the COVID, there are a lot of Black parents who unfortunately, and this is not only in Peel, in York Catholic, that have said they're not sending their kids back to school because they thrived with virtual learning. And I think that's sad that kids didn't feel safe in their learning environment and they do better in their homing environment. And it was so traumatic for them that a lot of Black parents are simply saying, we're not sending our kids back to the school system while we have this option for online learning. So that being said, Peel is, I have never been more hopeful than I have been since I started this journey as a trustee 6 years ago, with the appointment of our new director, Colleen Russell Rawlins. Just from the get-go, she started, hitting the ground running, and you just sense that there's change in the air. There's a sense of hope there. She seems like 100% totally committed to ensuring that all students, right, learn, that all students feel safe, that all students are inspired. So I think that with our new guidance, so we have our supervisor, and our supervisor, again, is an amazing individual, and he has quite a task as to helping us as trustees to to come together and work together, understand our roles and understand our responsibilities. But with both our supervisor and our director of education, I am very hopeful that the directives will be implemented, and the policies is not going to be something that's just going to be here so that, 2 years from now, or there's a change in staff, then it all falls apart. I think it's going to be implemented, and I think it's going to be in policy, and it's going to be done in such a way that people will be held accountable for ensuring that all students, minorities, Muslim students, Black students, Indigenous students, whatever marginalization, students in poverty, right? Students who have different gender identities. So all students will feel valued. So I'm really excited.
Thank you, Trustee McDonald, for your sentiments. What you said earlier about how kids, learning at home was better for them because of the racism they faced in schools. It's ridiculous, frankly. I graduated 4 years ago and I haven't seen any change in the board. My mom graduated a long time ago. She hasn't seen any change in the board. So now, looking to the future, Tasia, as you are a student of color in the system, what changes do you want to see in the Peel board to make it a more welcoming place for people like you and people like us?
For sure. I think that we need to have more open discussion and educate everyone. I feel like sometimes we kind of mistaken that only Black students want to receive that education, but in reality, it needs to be every single person at that school, because I've talked to people who told me that they were scared to talk about racism issues because they didn't know what to say and they were scared to say the wrong things. And I think that's our problem, just like even as adults and as children, that we're scared, and we shouldn't be scared to say the wrong things, and we need to be able to have these open discussions and have that space for mistakes, because when we say the wrong things, then we learn what to say for next time and what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. So I think that we need to really understand that when we are putting in these educational systems, that like it's not just for Black students, it's not just for us, it's for everyone in the entire school, so that like we're all learning together. And I think that's like one thing that we really need to stress, as well as consistency. As you guys said, like we don't want this to be like a 2-year thing and then it all falls apart. And one thing, mistake me if I'm wrong, I'm not too sure, but when I was looking at the supervisors that they put in place, it was only until like December or a couple of months. It wasn't for like a long term type of idea. And I don't think that's really the best idea, because change is not going to happen overnight. We are making a lot of changes right now, like compared to like the past couple of years. Like I think that we're at our highest point, but I don't think that having that supervisor in place for that short period of time is going to do enough. It should be for a longer period of time, so that there's that space for the mistakes to happen, because it's not going to be perfect. 100%, we're still going to make mistakes as we go. So we just need to kind of take that time so that we can have that consistency in place. That's just kind of how I feel about it in terms of consistency and having that open space for learning.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a great point, Tasia, about the supervisor. So, Trustee McDonald, I just want to ask, could you provide us with some more insight about the supervisor's role and what they're doing actively right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And first, I'd just like to piggyback on Tasia's comment. So I share her sentiments too, because I am also concerned with the length of time. But we have to remember, though, that the motion it was a minimum. So it does not mean that our supervisor is necessarily leaving at the end of December. So again, I guess he will probably, with consultation with the ministry, decide when he thinks he's no longer needed. So, and he is a very astute gentleman. So, I don't necessarily mean it's not written in stone that he is only there until December. So, I'm hopeful that he will stay until we as a board of trustees are truly ready to address all the issues in our board, that we truly understand our duty to all students. We understand our role of governance, right? And, so I'm hopeful about that. So our supervisor, what he does is, so we still do our community work and we bring our concerns to him. But in terms of the actual governance piece, voting on issues, so we don't vote on issues anymore. All trustees will bring our opinions and concerns with the supervisor, and he ultimately will make the decision. So, it's not a matter of putting motions and voting and waiting for majority. Basically, he is the majority, right? So whatever he deems as this is the direction and this is the policy that we should have, that is what will be done. And I think the intention of the supervisor is to eventually make sure that as trustees, we understand the importance of like our governance part of our role. So I think, and we have been doing training, and there, will be more training done. We're supposed to be doing on some online courses, and they even, for example, would suggest other webinars that they find relevant to our jobs, and it's up to us to attend them. But things like that, little PDs here and there, and big PDs here and there. So.
Right. And it's good to hear that change is happening, because unfortunately, even at my school, the principal made a racist comment at a staff meeting, and she's currently being investigated right now. And these are the kinds of things that, we shouldn't have these kinds of things happening. So kind of in response, like, Tasia, what do you think in terms of like even academic versus applied streamlining or just general decisions that the board is making? Like, are we going in the right direction?
So that was actually going to lead to a question I had for Trustee Kathy McDonald. I know that you guys have the Black Excellence Program coming into place. I wanted to know like what other changes are being made because school is around the corner. So I kind of wanted to get like a general idea of like what these changes are because I know you guys are getting training and that's amazing and all, but what is being changed so that like us, like the students feel the support that they need for when they go back into school in September?
I think it's going to be like unbelievable the difference that students will see. Right now, I mean, our director has only been there, I don't think it's 2 full weeks yet, or just around so. And she has been super consumed with COVID and getting the schools up and running. So, in terms of the actual development of plans, she would need a little more time than 2 weeks, right? However, though, we have the directives. We had 27 directives that were given to us by the ministry. And our associate director of equity, her name is Pauline Graywall, she has been charged with a lot of the work falls under her portfolio. So just looking at spec ed, we're looking at suspensions and
So
suspensions.
I'm really sorry. I'm gonna
What's
have to
that,
cut
sorry?
you off because for the sake of time, I'm gonna have to cut you off, but you will have a chance to, kind of give some ending remarks. So,
Okay.
first Trustee Bell and then Tasia, you have a couple last minutes to say some final words on the issue.
Yeah. So I would just start by saying, I am really excited in the direction that our board is heading now. And I feel really hopeful that there will be change. I think you're going to see changes in even how people are hired, who is hired. I think you're going to see anti-Black racism, anti-oppression. You're going to see anti-Indigenous racism all in the center of everything that we're doing. Islamophobia, they are going to address. So I think you're going to see a very different peel to come.
Yeah. Okay.
And Tasia, do you have any final remarks? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the changes happening. I just think that we do have a long way to go. So looking at different options. So as I said, like the diversity, not only in teachers, but in counselors as well. Looking at other, maybe like restorative justices rather than suspension. Just like looking at all of our options and kind of actually putting them in place rather than just talking about it. Because we do want to actually make the change and not just talk about it forever. So, but I believe in you guys, and I know it's coming, and these talks definitely do help hearing the youth opinion, and it's very important that we have the youth opinion when we're having these discussions.
So yeah, I just want to say thank you guys so much for, engaging. Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for engaging in this discussion. It's so overdue, and the only way that change is going to happen is if we keep having these conversations, and you guys are absolutely 100% key to that, and I'm so excited to continue discussing these things with you.
Absolutely. Yep, and we'd also just like to thank Karen for coming on the first panel and discussing back to school plans with us.
Okay, so from all of us here at Brampton Focus and City Studio, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to us discuss. We're excited to hear your thoughts. I'm Kavita Bassi.
And I'm Ananya J. Kumar, and good night, everyone.